Well, we've been very, very clear about this. I think some people thought that a cycling organisation would come on and start defending his actions. We've been really clear. Riding a fixed-wheel bike without a front brake is stupid. It puts him at risk. It puts other people at risk. And it was entirely appropriate that he was prosecuted. So there's not one aspect of his conduct here that we're saying, you know, was acceptable or making excuses. No ifs, no buts. It was stupid and reckless.
Does it expose, though, a wider problem, which is just a feeling of unaccountability of some cyclists? We know, of course, there are thousands and thousands and millions of cyclists who use the roads responsibly and are very often, you know, having to deal with irresponsible motorists all around them. But does it expose the fact that there is no accountability, there's no registration number, there's no registration of cyclists? So if you do have an incident, it's very hard to catch people. Maybe not an incident as serious as this, but see someone behaving you can see as very dangerous.
I think one of the problems with this discussion and the debate generally is it rapidly becomes a cyclist and motorist issue. The reality is that there are irresponsible people on our roads. I could leave here now and within a minute I would see somebody driving irresponsibly. It wouldn't take me long to find a pedestrian going down the street without looking.
I did make that point. I purposely tried... Sorry, if you'll just let me... Sorry to interrupt you, but I did make that point that there are irresponsible motorists, and I really don't want this to be motorists for cyclists because many of us, like myself, do both. But the point I was trying to make is, with a driver, there is accountability, there's registration, there's tax, there's insurance, all sorts of ways where we can track people down that are behaved irresponsibly. With cyclists, there isn't that, is there? If you see someone, and I've had moments myself of someone behaving what I see as very dangerously to themselves apart from anyone else, there's no way other than wrestling to the ground to actually deal with it.
I think there's a bit of a fallacy in relation to the accountability point, because the truth of the matter is we've had a 37% reduction in traffic police officers over a 10-year period, so there's limited accountability, full stop, in relation to the conduct of people on the roads.
Sir, you're here to answer the questions. No, you're not. We're asking the questions not on our behalf, but on behalf of the viewers. So could you respect them and just give us a direct... I don't want to hear... Sir, we didn't ask you about policing on the roads. We asked you... Sir, we didn't ask you about policing on the roads. Sir, would you please let us ask questions, and would you please answer them? Would you please answer the questions and not change the subject, because we know that that's what you're doing. You're just talking over us, and you won't answer the questions.
I'm asking you which question you're asking me to answer.
The question is
it the insurance one or the tax one?
Stop playing games. The question is really simple. Why don't cyclists...
I'm not playing games. I've asked you 5 times.
Would you listen to a question? Why aren't cyclists insured? They are road users just like motorists. Why don't they have to have insurance like road users? That would give them a responsibility that at the moment they don't have. Now, answer that question.
I'll answer that question. There are 25,000 people in this country with bikes. That includes, I think, something like 70% of people aged 5 to 12. The logistics of making an insurance system that required children to have insurance would be completely unworkable. Bikes also change hands more readily than cars because you have an issue regarding the sale of bikes because they're not the value of a car. If you required 6, 7, 8, 10-year-old children to have insurance, you'd have a system whereby many people would be discouraged from cycling, and it would not be something where the cost would be proportionate. The incident with Charlie Allison and Kim Briggs, which was appalling, had nothing to do with the fact that he was or was not insured. There are many, many cyclists who are insured through organisations like Cycling UK, like British Cycling. The incident occurred without any reference to whether or not he was insured. The issue is, how is that behaviour occurring and what should be done to tackle that behaviour? The question about accountability and insurance has got nothing to do with that.
OK, how do you tackle the behaviour?
There needs to be robust dealing with those that behave irresponsibly. I've been campaigning for years in relation to how motoring offences are dealt with, so it would be churlish of me to say, when we've been asking for years for a review of road traffic offences, that shouldn't include offences including cyclists. This young man was prosecuted for an offence, the legislation for which dates back to 1861. When you're talking about words like wanton and furious, that gives the clue that the legislation needs to be reviewed. But 4 consecutive Justice Secretaries have been tasked with that and have been effectively postponing that for years. Mr Briggs has called for a review of cycling legislation. We're not saying that when the government review legislation, they shouldn't incorporate that. We just want them to get on with the task that they've been promising for years.
I have to say that your answer to the question about cyclists being insured, it seems to me, is close to specious, because you're basically not accepting the point that adult cyclists should carry insurance. Of course they should if they're using the road. You're simply saying, well, it's too complicated because kids use bikes. And I can't believe that it's not beyond the wit of a committee to find a way around that problem. And then we could insure adult cyclists, and that would transform the way that they ride. And I think we both know that.
The insurance industry have looked at I don't know that at all. The insurance industry have looked at this and calculated effectively that when you look at the risk that cyclists present, that the cost would be in the pennies. So therefore it would become an unmanageable system. The reality is that we're talking about the death of a pedestrian, which is tragic, but 99.5% of deaths of pedestrians involve motor vehicles. That's the issue in this particular case. It's a bit of a... It's such an astonishingly rare event that that's why it's got the publicity that it has. Okay. But the insurance issue, you'd be imposing a system that required massive administration with a tiny premium.
Well, thank you very much for your time.